Donald Trump may never breathe the words, I concede. He may never say it, even as he walks out with his box in his hand, getting into a limo or getting into a helicopter and leaving the White House as Joe Biden comes in. He may never say the words. But what has happened today, for all intents and purposes, for all practicality's sake, Donald Trump has just conceded. Think about for a moment how we got here and why he had to concede. Basically, he's losing his lawsuits. They were frivolous to begin with. On top of losing the lawsuits, you had the situation where he tried to get the states to basically not certify the results. And even in some of these Republican states, the problem is the pressure that is being applied to all of these people to go against basically the typical order of things. And they don't want to set themselves on fire for Trump. Georgia, Pennsylvania. There was one more. Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Michigan all certified their results. This election is over. On top of the certification of the results, when Donald Trump was going into court, they would make one argument that was harebrained, but when they were in press conferences, it would be cloud nine stuff in regards to what these guys were talking about. I'm talking about Looney Tunes, the arguments that they were making. So understand where Trump is in this point. The president of the United States has put all of these lawsuits. The lawsuits failed. They were frivolous. They were joked at in court with a judge that were massively skeptical. On top of the lawsuits, you have all of these people dying with the president out there playing golf. Donald Trump has basically said there's fraud, there's fraud, there's fraud everywhere. It's ubiquitous. And unfortunately for Trump, the Republicans have gotten to the point where they're tired of it. Tucker Carlson, that's Donald Trump's, clarion call man, even comes out and says, show us the evidence. Giuliani waving these papers around. And then you had this indignity. You had this woman, Sidney Powell, is representing the president of the United States. Listen to what she says.
Farce. Georgia's probably going to be the first state I'm going to blow up, and Mr. Kemp and the Secretary of State need to go with it because they're in on the Dominion scam with their last-minute purchase or award of a contract to Dominion of $100 million. The State Bureau of Investigation for Georgia ought to be looking into the financial benefits received by Mr. Kemp and the Secretary of State's family about that time. And another benefit Dominion was created to award is what I would call election insurance. That's why Hugo Chavez had it created in the first place. But I also wonder where he got the technology, where it actually came from, because I think it's hammer and scorecard from the CIA.
That woman is representing Donald Trump, the president of the United States. Now, you may laugh at that, but again, this is the president of the United States. Does that have any gravitas at all? And if it does, and she's out here representing Trump, and she's basically saying, Governor Kemp, Republican, Trump supporter, Governor Kemp in Georgia is implicated in a scheme of Hugo Chavez's ghost, Nicolas Maduro's, bad look at it, and Cuba and Xi Jinping. And because those are communist countries, and this is a communist plot to get Joe Biden elected, well, communist countries, of course, don't make stuff, right? And so instead, it required the CIA to create the technology to help all of these guys work together to get Joe Biden elected. Come on. After she said that, the Trump campaign kicked her and basically said, we don't have anything to do with that woman. She's doing her own stuff. The problem is she was on a stage with Rudy Giuliani. Understand what I mean here. How can Republicans set themselves on fire when Donald Trump has people out here saying stuff like that in a bid to stay in office? They can't. You had multiple Republicans come out. You had Bernstein basically drop a litany, like 21 Republicans that basically despise Donald Trump. And you heard me make the argument that Donald Trump does not have the institutional power that would be necessary for him to remain in office. All of these people were screaming, coup, coup. But they missed the point that just because the Republicans are silent, their silence is because they don't necessarily want to be involved, because they don't want it to fall back on them, because Trump, at the end of the day, is still popular. He got 10 million more votes than what he had the previous time, meaning he upped his margin. Those people were still going out to those stadiums in order to see Donald Trump, meaning cross him at your own peril. Yes, you can have a Romney say something. You could have Baby Toomey. They attacked him. They attacked Carlson. But at the end of the day, I'm making the point that from a political standpoint, many of these people don't necessarily want to be on Trump's bad side, even as he walks out the White House, holding his box, strutting along the way with his Make America Great Again hat. A man fails. Trump, one-term president, and he's finally acknowledging it. Right here. Donald Trump. Well, let's start here. So there are all sorts of mechanisms that need to take place when an election is over with. You have some things that basically are usually perfunctory. But in this case, because Donald Trump didn't necessarily concede and there were lawsuits and everything else, there was a holdup in the initiation process for a transition over to Joe Biden. Well, that holdup is no longer there. With all of the failures, the lawsuits, the approval or certification of the results, that loony woman, Powell, that represented Donald Trump, that they were so embarrassed by, Giuliani, no self-respect or shame, was embarrassed by that. He didn't want to stand by that. Girl with skinny legs is not with us. But I'm making the point that all of these failures, all of these embarrassments get you to the point where your own party is alienated from you. You are basically by yourself with a cadre of lunatics. I would imagine that all sorts of pressure was being brought to bear on Donald Trump, with all sorts of people saying, dude, you got to concede, you got to concede, you got to concede. By the same token, Donald Trump has accomplished what he wanted to do, delegitimizing the electoral process. They went after him whole hog, saying that he was working with the Russians. Now, they were very careful in ensuring that the attack wasn't on the electoral system. The attack was on the minds of the voters. Russia put Facebook and Twitter ads, spending like $50,000, the majority of which happened after the election, but it affected people's minds. It made those people care about police killings. It made those people care about environmental justice. And Democrats at that point says, hey, we need censorship to stop people's minds from being affected in ways that make them not like us. We need censorship. But they were very careful to spare the electoral system. That's sacred. Donald Trump didn't do that. Donald Trump went directly at the electoral system and screamed, it's all fraud. It's all fake. And in the same way you had these people screaming about Russiagate, you're going to have people also screaming about Biden cheating a rigged race to get in office. Mark my words. This is going to be Russiagate 2.0. She's talking about the communists, the Cuba, China. She thinks China might play a little bit part of it. But, I mean, this stuff is ludicrous. So today, Emily Murphy, the administrator of the General Services Administration, has formally designated President-elect Joe Biden as the winner of the presidential election, providing federal funds and resources to begin a transition and authorizing his advisors to begin coordinating with Trump administration officials. That's usually perfunctory, but in this race, it was held off. She wanted to ensure that the legal processes worked their way out, the recounts worked their way out, and that Donald Trump got his fair shake. And once she realized he got his fair shake, once that loony woman got on television and made an embarrassment of all of this stuff, even Chris Christie came out and said, you're a national disgrace, a national embarrassment. Look, it was one plank after the next. He didn't necessarily have a case. And unfortunately, when you have 250,000 people dead, that's a hard time to win an election. By the same token, I would say if it wasn't for the mail-in ballots, Biden might not have won. There was no enthusiasm. So it's easy to fill out a form and mail it as opposed to having to get up and move your body to go to a polling location for a candidate you don't particularly like. The people who were voting for Trump were voting for Trump. The people who were voting for Biden was voting against Trump. There's a difference in those things. In this case, Murphy's decision made the point. She said, look, I wasn't being pressured or anything like that. She says, I made this decision when I realized this is over with. Donald Trump, again, may never say the words, I concede, but authorized Emily to basically push through the process to initiate the transition. He's also going to go and deal with his staff. Yeah, he's also going to deal with the staff, meaning he's authorizing his staff to begin the transition process with Joe Biden. Now, Emily basically has said Joe Biden has won this race. Donald Trump put this out as a tweet. I want to thank Emily Murphy at GSA for her steadfast dedication and loyalty to our country. She has been harassed, threatened, and abused, and I do not want to see this happen to her, her family, or employees of GSA. Our case strongly continues. We will keep up this good fight, and I believe we will prevail. Nevertheless, in the best interest of our country, I am recommending that Emily and her team do what needs to be done in regards to initial protocols, and I've told my team to do the same. Basically, Trump is saying, I have authorized Emily Murphy to start the transition process. I acknowledge, even though we're fighting it in the courts. Now, understand, like I said, he is not ever going to use the words, I concede. He will leave, but he may not say those words. And whether he says the words or not, initiating these protocols, allowing the transition process to take place, telling his staff to work with Joe Biden in order to make this work, that's a loss. That's an acknowledgement of a loss. That's an acknowledgement that he will be leaving the White House with his box in hand and his family with him. It's over. Trump and that era of Trump, 4 years, is done. I want to make one last point. Donald Trump, in some respects, was treated grotesquely unfair. Now, that was being, to some part, replicated right here in regards to what he did attacking the electoral system in this way. I would imagine he felt a certain degree of alienation, and I would even imagine he may actually believe that there was fraud or that there was cheating, especially depending upon the people who were whispering in his ear. Nevertheless, Trump, I don't believe, is going anywhere. Even though the era as a president may be over, Donald Trump was able to get 10 million more votes. He had people in massive stadiums, and that's more likely than not, as a businessman, he will convert that into some kind of opportunity, be it media or something else. And he will be able to still loom over the political space. You don't believe me? Fox News has been taking hits from Donald Trump. And Fox News ratings have plummeted. Take a look at Morning Consult. And this is, let's see, where is it? Right here. Fox News favorability among Republicans dropped post-election. Bam! And look at this. Unfavorables. Now why? Trump lost. But on top of Trump loss, Carlson and some of the other ones have been basically saying, look, if there's evidence, you need to show it. And they've even had people on that would basically say, yeah, the president is full of it. And so Trump has been bad-mouthing Fox News, and that very act of him bad-mouthing it has dropped the ratings of the studio. He looms over the Republican Party. There's a reason why those Republicans are basically staying silent and letting him just flounder, as opposed to kind of making these large condemnations. But those condemnations have started to get louder at this point. And I imagine that there are a lot of people who are telling him it's time to go. Like, share, and of course, subscribe. Thanks all.